Starting our list right, we have Jack Sparrow's mom is a cannibal. Not much is really known about Jack's mom, except her shrunken skull that was shown towards the end of the third installment at World's End. However, fans have theorized that Jack Sparrow's mother is actually a part of a cannibal tribe. Jack Sparrow's dad, Edward Teague, was a fearsome pirate with fortune that only few could imagine. But it's believed that he ended up on an island that inhabited the Naga tribe of India. My main reasoning for this is that the Naga's flamboyant use of braids and beads in their hair. Compared to pirates like Barbarossa, Sparrow, and Teague's outfits hold clear tribal significance. No other pirate in the movie has braids like Jack and Ed has. Teague has feathers on the front of his hat, similar to how the Naga warriors would wear on their heads. Also, Jack was said to have been born on a pirate ship caught in a typhoon off the coast of India. It's said that he keeps these traditions with him, and that's why Jack Sparrow looks the way he does. At number 9, we have the iconic Kraken. If you haven't been living under a rock, you should definitely know this mythological beast. In the second installment, Dead Man's Chest, the Kraken was introduced. It attacked the Black Pearl ship, and no matter what the crew does, how many weapons they try to use, nothing can stop it. Eventually, it would bring the whole ship down. The Kraken is not only part of the movie, but a part of Scandinavian folklore. It's said that the Kraken is a sea monster described to look like a giant squid that is around 100 feet in length with gigantic tentacles enough to take down ships whole. To take ships down, the Kraken will sometimes swim in circles around the ship, causing a fierce maelstrom which helps sink the ship. To think that 5% of the world's oceans have been explored, it makes us truly wonder if the Kraken is under there. Coming in at our number 8 spot, we have the Flying Dutchman. Seen in the movies as a ghostly ship, it's said that the very timbers of the ship are cut from the bodies and souls of doomed seamen. According to lore, the Flying Dutchman was originally used to collect the souls of who died at sea and take them to the afterlife. But back in the day when piracy was a thing, many feared encountering the ship in the open oceans. In the movie, the Flying Dutchman would be sailed by the iconic Davy Jones. When I think about him, I think about SpongeBob Davy Jones' locker, but the legend is much darker. The Flying Dutchman was given to Davy Jones by his love, the sea goddess Calypso. For 10 years, he could freely come ashore to meet with Calypso, but as time went by, she would suddenly stop appearing, causing Davy Jones to carve out his own heart and lock it away in Dead Man's Chest. His original duty of collecting souls and ferrying them to the afterlife completely 180'd, and he would end up wreaking havoc among the 7 seas. At number 7, we have the Devil's Triangle. In the 5th installment, Dead Man Tell No Tales, Jack Sparrow is hunted down by his old foe, Captain Salazar, who is a ghost set free from the Devil's Triangle. The Triangle's supernatural abilities revive Captain Salazar and his whole crew, causing him to have vast amounts of power. However, the Triangle is really based on the infamous Bermuda's Triangle. In real life, this body of water is situated in the Caribbean that connects Florida, Puerto Rico, and the country of Bermuda together, making a triangle. Boom, easy geometry. And this place should be avoided at all times, just like in the movie. It holds countless disappearances, including one of a squadron of US Navy bombers who completely vanished in good weather with no distress calls given. This place is shown in the movie and in real life to be a place no one should be going. Falling in at our number 6 spot, we have the fall of the Aztec Empire. In the movie, Orlando Bloom plays Will Turner, who teams up with Captain Jack Sparrow to rescue a loved one, Elizabeth Swann, from a crew of cursed skeletal pirates. The curse that was placed on the pirates was from a real-world figure who caused the fall of the Aztec Empire, Hernan Cortez. He was a 16th century Spanish traveler who was one of the first Spanish colonizers of America. He would move around the Caribbean and would intentionally cause indigenous tribes to battle one another. He would also force many to work for him while stealing gold and treasures from the Aztecs. From all this money and power, he took over the Aztec Empire using the sword of Cortez, which was said to make him unstoppable. And he also claimed the land under the King of Castile in Spain. It's said that he put a curse on his loot, and whoever tried to steal the curse would become damned. Right in the hump of our list, we have Blackbeard. Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard, was a famous English pirate who operated in the West Indies throughout the 18th century. Just like in the movies, Blackbeard was a name surrounded by fear and terror. He was notorious for sailing the Queen Anne's Revenge ship, which was a ship that used the bones of his victims, which definitely gave enemies a fair warning before engaging in combat. He would also be very cruel to his own crewmates, even going as far as treating them worse than his prisoners. After being prophesied about his death, he knew that he would have to locate the Fountain of Youth, and with the help of Captain Jack Sparrow, they went out and found the location. only to be met with the British Royal Navy. Blackbeard is quite possibly the greatest pirate to ever exist. Going down the list at number 4, we have Calypso. At the end of Dead Man Tell No Tales, when Davy Jones' heart gets stabbed and his body tossed into the sea, we hear Calypso laughing while she vanishes out of thin air. But who really is this? According to lore, she was the daughter of Atlas, who is the goddess of silence. Being a bored lass, she made it a point in her life to make sure people did not complete their task. She was also known as the goddess of deception because of her ability to distract sailors with her beauty, only to lead them to ruin and destruction because they would fail to pay attention to what they're supposed to be doing. She would be Davy Jones' partner and would be the one telling him what to do and how to do it. Basically, he was I'm just joking. You get what I mean. She was very powerful and could conjure up some of the worst natural disasters possible in the seas. Let's just hope she's still not out there. All the way at our number 3 spot, we have Human Bones in the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. This popular attraction is a boat ride that lets guests travel through the world of pirates and real human bones. Well, it was reported that when it was first built, the developers were so strict on the realism aspect of it all that they brought in real human skulls from the UCLA Medical Center to meet their high standards. And eventually, as the technology improved, they began making realistic skeletons instead to replace the real ones, saving them from further controversy. Disneyland states that there are no longer human remains on the ride, but others are convinced, saying that some remains still exist, including the skull on the headboard of the ride. It's definitely creepy to decorate a ride with actual human bones, but we think that Jack Sparrow would approve. At our number 2 spot, we have mermaids. Captain Jack Sparrow first encountered the mermaids in Isla Sirena during his quest for the Sword of Cortez. His shipmates were affected by the Song of the Sirens, but Jack himself remained immune to its influence. Eventually, the situation became worse and Jack was tricked into handing over the prized possession, the Eye of Stone-Eyed Sam, in exchange for the lives of his crew. Well, mermaids aren't anything new, and in this movie, they show some of their abilities pretty well. For example, mermaids are said to have a list of powers and abilities that sets them apart from other mythological creatures. As done in the movie, they are said to use sirens or their voices to lure sailors to their deaths and control their minds. They are also able to shapeshift between human and mermaid forms, also having the ability to control the weather and water around them. I'm guessing Ariel the mermaid is not as innocent as you think, or maybe she's controlling our minds to think that she is. Regardless, I'd be dumb enough to fall for a mermaid. Taking our number 1 spot, we have the Fountain of Youth. In the movies, Davy Jones urgently tries to locate the Fountain of Youth because he simply wants to live forever, haunting the 7 seas. As said, Jack Sparrow set off on a small vessel to locate this, while taunting Davy Jones about an immortal Jack Sparrow. I mean, that would be pretty awesome, right? But they soon realized that they're not the only ones looking for it. So what is so special about this Fountain of Youth? Well, legend goes that the fountain is able to restore the youth of anyone who drinks or bathes in its water. In the movie, it was located on a mysterious island in the Caribbean. However, its real locations aren't known. All that is known is that whoever finds it is never able to tell the story. Well, just for future reference, who wants to go to the journey for this fountain when they hit a midlife crisis? Starting our list right at number 10, we have Jack Sparrow is Jack Skeleton. Fans are convinced that these 2 Jacks are in fact the same person. This theory is a good one, so pay close attention. In the movie James and the Giant Peach, there is a scene where a centipede travels underwater to find a compass on a sunken pirate ship. Now, if you see Nightmare Before Christmas, you would notice that the captain of the ship resembles the same figure as Jack Skeleton. And it's no surprise, since the director Henry Selick shot both of the films. And for more clarity, here's a timeline of each movie. Pirates of the Caribbean in the 1700s, James and the Giant Peach in the 1920s to 50s, and then Nightmare Before Christmas around the 1960s due to the technology and cars seen in the film. This makes it even more plausible for this theory to work out, but we ain't done yet. It's theorized that sometime after the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, Jack Sparrow finds a crew for the Black Pearl, but eventually, they just sink. We all know this doesn't mean they're dead because we know all the many curses put on Jack Sparrow during the movies. Now let's say someone finds it, aka Mr. Centipede with La French hat, and touches the compass, which you all know Sparrow has and loves. This definitely would be the reason why an undead crew of pirates spawned out of nowhere. They say eventually the ship washes away to Halloween Town, and due to the pirate being cursed, he has no memories of his past life. This is where Jack Skeleton comes in and begins to search for his sense of belonging in the community. He eventually comes to the realization that all he is good at is scaring people, and that's okay with him. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a very Jack Sparrow thing to say. Coming in at our number 9 spot, we had Disney didn't like Depp's iteration of Jack Sparrow. When we think of Captain Jack Sparrow, all we can think about is Johnny Depp, because he embodies that character so well and he's just so damn entertaining. He plays the role so well that it's almost impossible to imagine anyone else playing that character. However, when the Pirates of the Caribbean first released back in 2003, Disney hated his version of Jack Sparrow, even going as far as Disney CEO Michael Eisner saying, quote, he was ruining the film. Disney wanted Jack Sparrow as a supporting role who was just your average take the loot and run type of pirate. But Depp had a completely different vision. He was inspired by Pepe Le Pew and English musician Keith Richards. He believed pirates to be a type of rock star of the seas and wanted to show that vision in his role. When the film was released and the public fell in love with Johnny Depp's Jack Sparrow, Disney couldn't help but suck up their opinions, sit back, and enjoy the movies. Coming in at our number 8 spot, we have A Poor Mental Health. Jack Sparrow is, beyond a doubt, a witty, slick, and extremely dynamic character in the franchise. He loves traveling the 7 seas, but somehow he finds himself at the center of conflict everywhere he goes. Okay, I know he's a pirate and that's the sort of thing pirates do, but Jack is much more different than that. And a lot of these indifferences could be explained through his mental processes. He shows symptoms of schizophrenia. You can tell because oftentimes he will hear hallucinations and see delusions of multiple versions of himself talking to him. Running our list down at number 7, we have Jack Sparrow is immortal or is extremely lucky. This theory might not come to a surprise to many, especially since Jack does death-defying acts at all times of the movies. For example, in the second rendition of the Pirates of the Caribbean, there's a scene where he escapes an island filled with cannibals. He manages to escape by falling right off a cliff, which in reality was at a height no one could survive at. Jack was left unharmed and with no injuries. In the 4th movie, he falls off yet another cliff. If he just jumped a little bit to the left or to the right, he would have died on impact. But Jack being Jack means that he takes 0 fall damage. Coming in at number 6, we have Jack Sparrow's name-held plot secrets. In the 2003 film Curse of the Black Pearl, we are first introduced to the infamous captain. We see that Jack wears a sparrow name literally on his arm as a set of tattoos. He got his name from the original battle with Captain Salazar. This was during a flashback of a young Jack. In this ordeal, Salazar said, quote, he just stood there looking like a little bird. Jack managed to outmaneuver Salazar, causing him to perish. However, this had another meaning to it. Let's talk about sparrow birds for a second. Not only do sparrows live free, like Jack does on the 7 seas, well, we all know Jack is definitely not quiet, nor is he introverted by any means. Right in the hump of our list, we have Jack Sparrow's mom is a cannibal. You ever notice how they tell us nothing about Sparrow's mom? Although her story is not important to the franchise, knowing the origins of Jack Sparrow's life is pretty important to us fans. Fans have theorized that Jack Sparrow's mother is actually a part of a cannibal tribe. Jack Sparrow's dad, Edward Teague, was a fearsome pirate with fortune that only few could imagine. It's believed he ended up on an island that inhabited the Naga tribe of India. If we look at the Naga tribe's use of braids and beads, you could kind of see the resemblance. Pirates like Barbarossa, Sparrow, and Teague were outfits that hold clear tribal significance. Teague has feathers on the top of his hat similar to how the Naga warriors would wear on their head. And besides, no other pirate in the 7 seas had braids like Jack and Ed does. Stealing our number 4 spot, we have his descent into alcoholism. Is there really any time where we don't see Captain Jack Sparrow acting drunk during the movies? I don't think so. It almost seems as if he's in a permanent drunken state, but that's exactly what actor Johnny Depp was trying to portray. Disney actually thought Depp was ruining the character, as mentioned before, by showing minors that a mindless drunk can also be a hero. One of the film's producers even wanted to put subtitles down for Sparrow just because they couldn't understand some of the words coming out of his mouth. However, this was completely denied because this was just Depp expressing his creative process as an actor. The alcohol takes over the character more and more throughout the films, and you can see how much affect the character's ability to make quick and intellectual decisions. His luck pulls him out of many tough situations though. I honestly don't know why I'm judging his drinking so much. He's a pirate after all, and since all he does is sail in the open waters, drinking is probably the best thing to do. All the way at our number 3 spot, we have one of Jack's first crewmates was a cousin of his future rival. Jack's rival, James Norrington, started off as a pretty natural adversary for Jack Sparrow. Jack was a pirate while James served as aristocrats of the world. They got along like oil and water. In the first movie, James showed leniency with Jack, but that was all but a facade. James hated Jack and blamed the pirate for ruining his whole life. As it turned out, Jack met James' older cousin as a teenager. Fitzwilliam P. Dalton III was his name, and he was one of the first members of Jack's first pirate crew looking to find the Sword of Cortez. Eventually, Dalton would betray Jack, revealing that he was a British Royal Navy spy the whole time. At our number 2 spot, we have Jack Sparrow was branded a pirate for doing good. So here's a little bit of backstory for Captain Jack Sparrow. He was a former captain of the Wicked Wench, which was a galleon that operated under the East Indian trading flag. He was just your regular average pirate at the time, looking for any way to make a fortune. All until that fortune came in the form of slaves. The governor of that trading company was Cutler Beckett, and one day he decided to sell the ship to Sparrow in hopes he'd transport a shipment of slaves. Sparrow originally agreed due to his greed and lust for money, but his conscience quickly caught up back with him. After denying to transport these slaves, Beckett branded him a pirate, and to add insult to injury, he forced Jack to watch as they burned down the Wicked Wench. All the way at our number 1 spot, we have the compass was the key to everything. Jack Sparrow's compass, also known as a windrose, was an unusual navigational instrument shrouded in speculation. He bartered it from the voodoo mystic Tiadama, and later inherited from his captain. At first, the compass was deemed unusable since it didn't even point true north. It wasn't your ordinary compass. This magical compass would only point to the thing the owner desired most. This is why I believed it was the most important tool in the whole film. And without the compass, nothing would be accomplished, leading Jack to a regular pirate life. The compass leads Jack to the Isle de la Muerte in the first film, and then to the heart of Davy Jones in the second film, and helps Gibbs get back the Black Pearl on Stranger Tides. Without the compass's help, Jack would just be another regular pirate roaming the 7 seas.
Starting off at number 10, we have Harry Potter being literally born to rule. So, Harry Potter's birthday is July 31st, 1980, making his zodiac sign a Leo. Love Leos personally. And in the Celtic zodiac, that places him under the Holly sign. People born under the Holly sign are told to be natural-born leaders. And for those of you who don't know, Harry Potter's wand is made of a very specific type of wood, holly. And with this theory set in place of basically being born to rule, we didn't know if he would rule being bad or being good. Either said to save the wizarding world or destroy it. Good thing it was to save, because who knows what would have happened if it wasn't. At number 9, we have the Room of Requirement is indestructible. So we all know, in the movie Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, the school ends up forming a group to fight against the Ministry of Magic, and they train in the Room of Requirement. Specifically, they make that group to fight against Dolores Umbridge, which we all know and don't like. Dolores Umbridge ends up finding them and destroying the Room of Requirement. But we see it again in the end of the movie series where Draco and his friends set fire to the Room of Requirement to attack Harry and his friends. The fire spreads and eventually explodes, showing us the Room of Requirement has yet again been destroyed. The thing is, the Room of Requirement can't ever truly be destroyed. To quote Hermione from the movie, it's also known as the come and go room. The Room of Requirement only appears when a person has a real need for it, and is always equipped for the seeker's needs. Ron then says, so say you really needed a toilet. Good one, Ron. She then says, charming Ronald, but yes. Therefore stating that the Room of Requirement can never really, truly disappear, and can be anywhere and anything you need it to be. Here at number 8, we have real-life mandrakes. You first see mandrakes in Harry Potter in the Chamber of Secrets in herbology class, where Professor Sprout tells them to wear earmuffs because hearing a baby mandrake scream can make them pass out, and hearing an adult one can kill them. We all remember when Neville kind of passed out on the floor from hearing a mandrake, so that one makes sense. What people don't know is that people actually believe that they're real. They said it looks like a human, so they thought mandrakes had human souls and could actually feel pain, and that they would let out a scream and it would kill the person pulling the plant out of the ground. I've never come across a mandrake plant myself before, so I'm not sure if this one's true or just a myth, but let me know if you ever try it. Now at number 7, we have Dementors resembling depression. If you've seen the movies, you most likely know what a Dementor is, but if you don't, Dementors are dark creatures that feed on any kind of human happiness. They can also consume someone's soul, leaving them in a permanent vegetative-like state. So it's said that Dementors represent depression in the movies, which is why they feed on happiness and can cause a person to feel sad or empty. But I guess it makes sense for how someone is supposed to get rid of a Dementor by casting a Patronus charm. And to cast a Patronus charm, you have to think of your happiest memory. Jumping into number 6 with Fluffy guarding the underworld. The theory is that Fluffy, the three-headed dog we see in the first Harry Potter movie, is from Greek mythology as Cerberus. Cerberus was given the role of guarding the underworld by Hades, the god of the underworld. Sounds quite similar to when Dumbledore used Fluffy to guard the trapdoor in Hogwarts. It's also said that Cerberus could be put to sleep by music. Sound familiar? Fluffy was put to sleep in the first movie by using a spell on a harp to have it play continuously to keep Fluffy asleep. There's also theories that say Cerberus looks like a dog, but with 50 heads. But again, this is just a theory because some say it's a snake, a lion, and so on. So we don't really know, I guess. Halfway there at number 5, we have the basilisk. In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, there was a very big snake called the basilisk who kills people just by looking at them. Sound familiar? Medusa. It lives in the Chamber of Secrets with a goal of killing any Muggle-born or non-magic-born students. The snake ends up getting its eyes clawed out by a phoenix sent by Dumbledore to protect Harry. Harry is then able to kill it because it can no longer kill people without its eyes. But the basilisk isn't just a snake in Harry Potter. The big snake appears in early modern history around 1497, and it's said that it was born of a chicken egg. A chicken egg. Kinda makes me not want to have scrambled eggs again. Now here at number 4, the Devil's Mark. In Harry Potter, there are Death Eaters who are known as followers of Voldemort. When you become a follower of Voldemort, you get a dark mark. When Voldemort pressed the mark, every Death Eater with a dark mark would know they're being called by him, and their marks would all start to burn at the same time. In mythology, it's said that the devil marked his followers in secret places. It's essentially Voldemort's version of the Devil's Mark. But with the Devil's Mark, it's said that the secret places the devil would mark them would basically be any kind of skin imperfection. For example, basically anyone with a small scar could be considered a Devil's Mark. Here at number 3, we have Dumbledore as Death in the Deathly Hallows. The Deathly Hallows is a very long story, so I'm not going to get too deep into it, but basically it's said that Dumbledore can be seen as representing death in many ways. At one point, he even had all 3 Deathly Hallows: the Elder Wand, the Cloak of Invisibility, and the Resurrection Stone. Dumbledore also is there in the last movie when Harry dies and goes to King's Cross Station. This is personally my favorite theory of them all. Coming in at number 2, the Dursleys were abusive towards Harry because Voldemort made him a Horcrux. Harry was the Horcrux that Voldemort never meant to make. It's said that Voldemort's true Horcruxes were capable of dramatically changing the personality of someone exposed to one for extended periods within close proximity. Like in the Deathly Hallows Part 1, when Ron wore one of the Horcruxes for too long and he started to become very angry and had a fight with Harry and stormed off. Remember when he wore that necklace and then completely lashed out thinking that something was going on between Harry and Hermione? Anyway, it's said that this is why the Dursleys were so horrible to Harry, because they were affected by him being a Horcrux. And last but not least, for number 1, for the scariest Harry Potter urban legend, we have the wizarding world in Harry Potter wasn't even real. Some say that because of how mean the Dursleys were to Harry, that he continued to live under the stairs to escape from their abuse. He would imagine that he lived in a magical world where he was the most popular and the most talked about person in the wizarding world. And what's used to back this up is that near the end of the Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, Harry finds himself in King's Cross Station, but it's all pure white. Harry describes that as being very clean. Harry says to Dumbledore, "Is this all real or is it just happening inside my head?" And then Dumbledore replies with, "Of course it's happening in your head, Harry. Why should that mean that it's not real?"
Exorcist was an immediate hit to the box office when it hit theaters in 1973, racking up over $400 million along with winning many Academy Awards, Best Screenplay, and Golden Globe Award, Best Screenplay and Director. With worldwide attention, this led many pockets of fans to find out if they saw on screen was in fact a true story. And unfortunately, it was. It all started in 1940 Maryland when Roland was born into a German family. He was an only child, but as time went on, he eventually formed a bond with his Aunt Harriet. Other than showing Roland the ropes to life, such as riding a bike or learning to save money, she had a very spiritual approach instead. Aunt Harriet felt very connected to the occult and would even go as far as showing Roland a Ouija board in which he showed quick interest in, playing it almost daily at one point. Author Thomas B. Allen wrote a story on Roland Doe, and he claimed that shortly after his Aunt Harriet passed away, the family began to report very strange occurrences from inside of their home. Some of these include scratching sounds from the floors and the walls, constant mold and water damage, and I know what you're thinking, that could just be some simple house issues. Well, that's what the family said at first, until things got a lot worse. Furniture would begin to move on its own. Specifically, Roland's mattress would move around in the middle of the night, shaking his body with it. Roland claimed that he attempted to contact his deceased aunt via the Ouija board prior to these events, which only made it more reason to believe something supernatural was behind it all. At this point, they knew whatever was happening to him was in fact real, and they needed to do something about it before it just got worse. They seeked out every expert, including medical professionals, psychologists, except it wasn't until they decided to turn to God and ask their local Lutheran minister, Luther Miles Scholz. He was just perfect for the job because he was a firm believer of parapsychology, which is, for those who don't know, the study of alleged psychic phenomena. Even though this was more so related to those who had near-death experiences, Roland's case was far too interesting to not consider. He then decided to conduct his own self-experiment with the boy by taking him to his house to observe his actions, behaviors, and more importantly, what's going on around him. Shortly afterwards, his house became the scene of many alarming events, including unexplained noises, rearranged furniture, and even flying objects. And to back up these claims, there are about 48 witnesses to these events. And after being examined by medical and psychiatric doctors, they offered no explanation to the events, only describing it as supernatural. Scholz knew he was out of his element and offered the advice to seek out a Catholic priest for further assistance. The family was so fearful at this point that they would do anything. They weren't religious, but then they decided to have Roland baptized. Except even this would prove impossible. As he was being baptized, the priests were met with extreme rage, so they decided to stop altogether and just call it. They then went to the local Catholic priest, Father E. Albert Hughes, who just gave them some holy water and candles and just basically told them, yup, good luck guys. After realizing nothing was going to help Roland out and that his conditions were just worsening, they went back to the priest. This is when Father Hughes conducted an exorcism on Roland at Georgetown University Hospital, which is a Jesuit institution. During the exorcism, Roland managed to break free from his restraints and lash out at the priest's arm with a bed spring, causing the ritual to end abruptly. After this, the family then traveled out to St. Louis, Missouri in hopes of finding someone capable of helping Roland. One of Roland's cousins then spoke to his professors at the St. Louis University named Walter Halloran, who then contacted another priest by the name of William S. Boder. These priests agreed to see what's up, and after coming to one of the relatives' homes where Roland was staying, they concluded there was definitely something supernatural going on. They jotted down notes like shaking bed, flying objects, saying the boy was speaking in a growling voice, and even speaking in Latin, which was nothing new at this point, but only further confirmed that the boy was indeed possessed. Bodern then went to the Archbishop in order to request another exorcism, in which he was granted. On the final exorcism at Alexian Brothers Hospital, Bodern, along with Father Halloran and Van Roo, took Ronald to deep waters. This is the event that the movie takes parts of because this is where things went from bad to worse. Father Halloran will report in his notes that the words evil and hell would appear on the teenager's body out of nowhere. When the priest called upon the saints of heaven for assistance, this is when they were called the mattress was violently shaken. And when they started to provoke the demon further, the possessed Roland lunged out at Halloran, breaking his nose completely. After a while, the priest called upon Saint Michael to expel Satan from his body. 7 minutes later, and Roland would come out of a trance-like state with his first words being, "He's gone." When they asked the boy what he's just experienced, he's claimed to see the vision of Saint Michael vanishing Satan on a great battlefield. However, this is all speculated. Reporters were also all over the case due to the sheer mystery of it all. When they interviewed Father Halloran, he said that Roland Doe was saved and the devil had been expelled from his body. Now, how did the true story align with the movie, The Exorcist? Well, it all started thanks to this article in the Washington Post, which reported in August 1949 that priests have indeed performed an exorcism. However, this would only bring small attention as the article left out many details, including the specifics of the exorcism, the name of the subject, and any solid evidence backing up the claims. It wasn't until William Peter Blatty, the writer I mentioned in the beginning, wrote the novel The Exorcist. He based the whole whole premise off the unofficial diaries kept by Father Halloran and Bodern, who were two of the three priests that were present during the exorcism in the first place. The moment the book was released, it was an instant hit, staying on the bestseller list for over 54 weeks straight. The international attention influenced them to create a movie under the same name in 1973. However, as we see now, the movie and the true story have many clear differences. For example, the material turned a teenage boy named Roland into a 12-year-old girl named Regan. Another clear difference to mention is that Roland never turned his head 360 degrees. That was only in the movie. Roland did, however, curse profusely, vomit everywhere, gain scratches out of nowhere, and was even attempting to hurt the priest involved. So despite the movie not being one for one, they did enough to give justice to the true story. It wasn't until 5 years after the movie was released in 1978 when evidence started to convince the public further. Workmen demolishing part of the St. Louis hospital where Roland has stayed were removing furniture. In a locked room, they discovered an unofficial record of his visit tucked underneath a drawer. The document went into detail about those 4 nights the priest tried to exorcise Roland. Both the movie and the true story do have good endings though. Both victims eventually got the demon expelled and live out the rest of their lives. So what happened to Roland Doe after the exorcism? So first of all, as I mentioned, his real name had been confirmed to be Roland Edwin Hunkler. And after he underwent all the exorcisms, he and his family moved back to their old home in the East Coast and lived out a pretty normal life. After a few years, Roland would become a full-fledged NASA engineer, and he remained as one for 40 years. During this whole time, he hid his true identity and the fact that he was a victim of a demonic possession in fear of being judged at his own workplace. As a NASA employee, he had a lot to contribute as well. He helped patent a technology that allowed space shuttle panels to tolerate excessive heat, but apart from these advances, he would always be worried about his past being revealed. An unnamed source claimed, quote, "On Halloween, we always left the house because he figured someone would come to his residence and know where he lived and never let him have peace. He had a terrible life from worry, worry, worry." He would eventually retire at the agency in 2001, and 19 years later in 2020, he would pass away from a stroke. Shockingly, a priest arrived just before his death to give him his last rites, even though he never recalled asking for one. He just thought it was a sign from God and just took it. First of all, the church doesn't believe that every suspected case of demons or possession are true, and the Catholic Church does not fake exorcism. So for all you skeptics, the only reasonable thing to point out is if Roland Doe was acting irrationally, or was he actually possessed by the devil? Skeptic Joe Nickell wrote, quote, "Simply no credible evidence to suggest that the boy was possessed by demons or evil spirits, and maintains the symptoms of possession can be childishly simple to fake." Nickell dismissed suggestions that supernatural forces made scratchings or even markings or caused words to appear on the teenager's body in unreachable places. He continued saying, quote, "A determined youth, probably even without a wall mirror, could easily have managed such a feat. If it actually occurred, although the scratch messages proliferated, they never again appeared on a difficult to reach portion of the boy's anatomy. On one occasion, the boy was reportedly seen scratching the words hell and Christ on his chest by using his own fingernails." Nickell would release a longer statement saying, quote, "Nothing that was reliably reported in the case was beyond the abilities of a teenager to produce. The tantrums, trances, moved furniture, hurled objects, automatic writing, superficial scratches, and other phenomena were just the kind of things someone at Roland's age could accomplish, just as others have done before and since. Indeed, the elements of poltergeist phenomena, spiritual communication, and demonic possession, taken both separately and especially together as one progressed to the other, suggests nothing so much as role-playing involving trickery." He concluded by saying that Roland was nothing more than just an agitated teenager. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys believe in the true story of Roland Doe, or was it just made for quick publicity? This is definitely one of those cases that will make you scratch your head and question what really went down in these hospital rooms. Also, what do you guys think about the movie? After hearing the true story, do you think they did a good job? I want to know all your thoughts in the comment section below.
Starting off this countdown at number 10, The Omen. Gregory Peck, who played the main character in the movie, lost his son shortly before filming began. Peck's aircraft and the scriptwriter and executive producer's plane was struck by lightning on their way to the filming. The IRA bombed the hotel where the producers were staying and a restaurant where the directors and actors were supposed to eat during the filming. A tiger trainer who assisted in the filming of The Omen was also eaten alive by the tiger. But the story doesn't end there. Following the completion of filming, special effects consultant John Richardson was involved in a car accident, taking the life of his assistant. One time, Peck canceled a flight he planned for reasons unknown. This flight ended up crashing, taking the lives of all passengers on board. The date of the accident was cursed as well. It took place on Friday, August 13th, 1976. If you watch the film now, it has a way more darker undertone to it. Number 9, Antrim. Antrim is a documentary about a lost 1970s film that was only screened twice because everyone who watched it passed away. The movie opens with an 8-minute documentary detailing the curse around the film, then shows you the film itself, which is about 2 young kids who attempt to dig a hole to hell to save their recently deceased dog. The filmmakers do their best to make the movie within a movie look authentically 70s. Some eager horror buffs even tried to track the original Antrim down, believing it to be real. Number 8, The Conqueror. The movie stars cinema legend John Wayne as the Mongol conqueror Genghis Khan, as he battles against Tartar armies for the love of their princess Bortai. The film was shot near St. George, Utah, which is 137 miles downwind from the US government's Nevada National Security Site, where 11 nuclear weapons tests occurred in 1953. Following the completion of The Conqueror, cancer ran among both the cast and crew members and would continue to affect those a part of production for years to come. Of the 220 crew members for the film, 91 developed cancer during their lifetime, with 46 passing from it. Director Dick Powell passed of cancer in 1963, 7 years after completion. John Wayne passed away in 1979 from stomach cancer, though he himself blamed the diagnosis on his 6-pack-a-day cigarette habit. Susan Hayward and Pedro Armendariz both succumbed to cancer and cancer-related illnesses, with Hayward passing away in 1975 from brain cancer and Pedro taking his own life when he discovered he had terminal neck cancer. Number 7, The Wizard of Oz. In the 1939 film, The Wizard of Oz is, however, not considered cursed, because an actor taking their own life was supposedly caught on screen. What is true, however, is that there were enough on-set accidents to lend The Wizard of Oz its own cursed reputation. For starters, actors Buddy Ebsen and Jack Haley both suffered severe reactions to the makeup for the Tin Man, while Margaret Hamilton, aka the Wicked Witch of the West, endured life-threatening burns during her big disappearing act early on in the film. Not even poor little Toto was safe, as an on-set trainer reported that one of the witch's foot soldiers accidentally stepped on the dog during a take. Number 6, Atuk. This movie tells the story of a proud and fierce Inuit hunter who tries to adapt his life in the fast-paced New York City. The script was written by Todd Carroll, and the project had been circulating since the 1970s, with many Hollywood producers and studios showing interest in the film. 4 of the actors attached to the comedy all met untimely ends: John Belushi, Sam Kinison, John Candy, and Chris Farley. The first victim of the curse was Saturday Night Live legend John Belushi, who read the script in 1982 and was extremely interested in portraying the character. He was set to headline the project, but just months later, on March 5th, 1982, the beloved funny man passed away from an overdose at 33. Following his passing, the comedian Sam Kinison got his hands on the script and was set to star, but was fired over rewrites and creative control. He then passed away in a car accident on April 10th, 1992. Halfway, number 5, The Passion of the Christ. Getting struck by lightning is never a good sign. But what if you also happen to be portraying Jesus Christ in one of the most controversial movies of the year? This happened to Jim Caviezel on set of The Passion of Christ, as well as the assistant director on the film, who got struck twice. Then there were reported accidents associated with the scourging and crucifixion of Christ, which saw Caviezel get accidentally whipped for real by a co-star. He endured a dislocated shoulder from carrying the cross, a lung infection from the weather, and massive migraine headaches from the bloody eye makeup. Number 4, The Misfits. John Huston's 1961 American Western The Misfits centers on a divorcee who falls for a cowboy struggling to maintain his romance-free lifestyle in the northern Nevada desert in 1960. The picture famously stars Marilyn Monroe, Clark Gable, and Montgomery Clift, and was based on the screenplay Arthur Miller, Marilyn's husband at the time. Despite such a warm reception, the Western's reputation was ruined by the passing of its 3 beloved stars, each of which passed shortly after production was completed. Clark Gable passed on November 16th, 1960 at the age of 59 from a heart attack, just 12 days after finishing The Misfits. Though the silver screen legend had been an avid smoker since his teenage years, his wife Kay Williams believed that the film's intense production and on-set tension was a big factor in his passing. Marilyn Monroe notoriously hated the picture, having disliked that Miller based the role partly on her life as well as his frustrating constant rewrites. The 20th century pop culture icon passed from an accidental overdose on August 4th, 1962, a year and a half after filming. The Misfits was both her and Gable's last completed film. Montgomery Clift passed away just 6 years later on July 23rd, 1966 from a heart attack, among other health issues. His live-in personal secretary, Lorenzo James, revealed that The Misfits was on television the night he passed and asked if he would like to watch, to which Clift firmly replied, absolutely not. Number 3, Poltergeist. Tobe Hooper's 1982 supernatural horror flick Poltergeist follows a suburban family whose home is invaded by malevolent spirits that abduct their daughter, and was written and based on the screenplay by Steven Spielberg, another one on this list. The classic picture has a lot of darkness associated with it, as two of its promising young talents unfortunately passed. Heather O'Rourke shined as Carol Ann Freeling in the freaky horror installments, but sadly passed away from septic shock before the release of Poltergeist 3. She was just 12 years old. Her on-screen big sister Dominique Dunn was tragically strangled by her ex-boyfriend, passing at 22 from her injuries 5 days later on November 4th, 1982. Number 2, The Crow. Son of martial arts icon and film star Bruce Lee, Brandon Lee portrays a murdered musician who was resurrected to avenge the deaths of himself and his fiancée in The Crow. Tragedy struck production when the 28-year-old Lee was fatally wounded during a scene in which his character Eric Draven is shot after witnessing his fiancée being assaulted. Actor Michael Massey's character Fun Boy fires a .44 Magnum Smith and Wesson Model 629 at the actor as he walks into the room. Prop Assistant was unaware of the rule for inspecting all firearms before and after handling, so that the barrel was not checked for obstructions. A bullet from the dummy round was trapped in the barrel and caused the .42 Magnum bullet to be fired virtually with the same force of a live round. Lee was struck in the abdomen and succumbed to his injury after 6 hours of unsuccessful emergency surgery. Now coming in at number 1, Twilight Zone the movie. The 1983 sci-fi horror anthology film Twilight Zone the movie features 4 segments inspired by the iconic Rod Serling TV show. Its production and overall legacy is marred by the tragic helicopter accident that claimed the lives of lead star Vic Morrow and child actors Micah Dinley and Renee Shin-Yi Chen around 2:30 a.m. on July 23, 1982. The two illegally hired children and were in violation of the California law, which prohibits them from working at night or in proximity to explosives. The segment's director John Landis had been on set during the accident. The night scene called for Morrow to carry the children across the river while being chased by American soldiers in the hovering helicopter. But a rotor failed, which caused the low-flying helicopter to spin out of control. Morrow, Lee, and Chen passed away instantly. Kicking it off at number 10, Miss Kelly is Vecna's slave. In season 4, we saw the counselor Miss Kelly that talked to Max.
How's your mom holding up? She's fine?
It was confirmed that everyone the counselor talked to, Vecna took or tried to take. And Vecna only takes people who have a dark past. So what if the counselor is under Vecna's control, and every time someone goes to talk to the counselor, if she deems it is dark enough, she then tells Vecna so Vecna knows who to curse. Also, Miss Kelly is always seen wearing a clock necklace. A clock which whenever someone is cursed by Vecna is the first thing they see. Now at number 9, Mind Flayer. So in the end of season 4, volume 1, we find out that Vecna was the first one in the Upside Down. But Dustin had said in season 1 that the Upside Down had probably been around for millions of years. But they say that Vecna is the most powerful. Vecna taking teenagers just seems like he's collecting people for the Mind Flayer. And the Mind Flayer has and always will be the one in charge, and the most powerful. I don't think when 11 killed 1 that she created the Upside Down. I think she just banished him to the Upside Down, where he saw the Mind Flayer. And Vecna, just like the Demodogs, are the Mind Flayer's foot soldiers. Taking number 8, Billy is coming back. So I know you probably think, oh no, he's not coming back, like we saw him die at the end of season 3 by the Mind Flayer. Well, here's the theory that most Reddit posters believe. In season 4 volume 2 trailer, we can see what looks like a Mind Flayer trapped in a cage in what we think is still in Russia. Well, what if when the Mind Flayer killed Billy, it absorbed his energy, so that the shadow-looking Mind Flayer in the cage then humanizes and turns into Billy?
You can't stop this now.
Or what if Billy shows up in the Upside Down to help them, because in season 3 we saw a duplicate of Billy in the Upside Down. I mean, they already killed him off with an emotional death scene, so maybe not, but I guess it's possible. We can also hear in season 3 what sounds like the same clock sound from season 4 when Billy's in the Upside Down. Here at number 7, Steve is going to die. In season 4, episode 7, Nancy, Steve, Robin, and Eddie ended up getting stuck in the Upside Down after going through Watergate. Steve went in first, then came back up, and then got pulled back in. That's when everyone jumped in to save him. While they were trying to save him, the bats, if you can even call them that, were biting Steve, and it looked like some pretty bad bites. Robin even seemed quite concerned about rabies, so maybe that's foreshadowing that Steve will get rabies, or it'll be an infection that spreads, and because it's from the Upside Down, they don't have a cure in the regular world, and Steve will die. I mean, I really hope not, because I think I speak for all Stranger Things fans when I say we love Steve and don't want him to die, but will he?
Chrissy, wake up! I don't like this! Chrissy, wake up!
Coming in at number 6, Lab Kids. In season 2, we were introduced to Eleven's sister, 8, and then the two parted ways so that 11 could go back to Hawkins and help her friends. 8 then went with her friends to escape from the police. Some think that 8 will come back to help in the fight against Vecna. Some also think that it won't happen because we had a little time with 11's sister, and their story was quickly put to an end, so it was just the end of a storyline. Others believe that 3 is going to be a villain in season 5. When 11 was trying to get her powers back, she did so in Nina. And while she was in Nina, she had memories of her being in the Rainbow Room, constantly trying to get the number 3 with that game where you put the little coin down the thing. You know what I'm talking about. Some think that 3 will be evil and very powerful and play the villain in season 5, that 11 will have to fight. Halfway at number 5, Will dies. In season 4, episode 4, titled Dear Billy, Max goes to Billy's grave to just say goodbye because she thinks Vecna is gonna take her. Max ends up flying in the air as Vecna is just about to take her life and keep her body in the Upside Down forever. Luckily, they figured out music can help Vecna stay out of your head. In a behind-the-scenes video of Sadie Sink's character Max practicing the floating scene, we can see her strapped up in a harness. A photo was then leaked of what looks like Noah Schnapp, who plays Will, strapped up in a harness. Some say they won't kill off Will because they already almost did in the first 2 seasons, but the reaction Will's mom would have if Will actually did die would be insane. So is Will actually going to die, or will it be someone else? Or hopefully no one. Now at number 4, 11. In the end of season 4, we saw 11 get her powers back and she looks stronger than ever. Reddit users seem to think that 11 will have all the other powers that other kids in the lab have, and in Volume 2 Season 4 trailer, we can see Vecna using his powers, so some think the 11 and Vecna fight, she will absorb his powers and then become immensely powerful.
What's happening?
Others seem to think that Vecna will absorb 11's powers and he will kill her. Here at number 3, Nancy. So in the last episode of Season 4, Volume 1, we saw Nancy come under Vecna's curse. So that puts everyone under a lot of pressure because they need to figure out what her favorite song is. Otherwise, Vecna will take her. In the Season 4, Volume 2 trailer, we can see Eddie in what looks like the Upside Down playing a guitar. So the theory is that they figure out her favorite song and Eddie plays her favorite song on his guitar. Or the other theory is that they don't figure out what her favorite song is, and when Vecna takes her, she doesn't make it.
Nancy. Hey! Stay with me, Nancy!
Coming in at number 2, 11's father is Dr. Brunner. So as we saw in earlier seasons, 11 was kept in her own room away from others at times, and Brunner seemed to take a more special interest to 11. Now this could be because she's more powerful than the others, or it could be because Brunner is her real birth father. In season 1, when we thought she died, Brunner picked her up and seemed to be genuinely concerned for her. Now maybe that's because he thought he lost one of his little science experiments, or maybe it's because it's his real daughter.
11, can you hear me? 11.
We also saw that photo of Dr. Brunner and her mother Terry walking together in season 2. Maybe Terry got pregnant with his child and Brunner decided to do experiments on her because it was his child too, and that he and Terry were together so it was okay. But I don't know, regardless, Dr. Brunner is still crazy and shouldn't be using those kids for his research. And 11 and the other kids have always called him Papa, but in the last episode of Volume 1, he calls her daughter.
I don't understand.
I do. Papa. Daughter.
Taking spot number 1, Eddie is 10. So probably the biggest theory of them all is that Eddie Munson is 10 from Hawkins' lab. The main reason people believe this is because in the first episode of season 4, Eddie mentions that he once had buzzed hair.
My hair was buzzed and I didn't have these sweet old tatties.
Which of course is the standard hairstyle for Brunner's lab kids. Second, people are guessing that the watch he wears on his left wrist could be to cover up his possible 10 tattoo. And in the later episodes in the season, while it does show the rest of the lab kids on the ground covered in blood with their eyes exploded, we never actually see 10's eyes. So he may have actually survived in the room with Brunner. Another point in the theory says that Eddie wasn't particularly shocked when Steve told him about 11 and her powers. He didn't even have a reaction at all. Others have also suggested that 10 bears an uncanny resemblance to Eddie.
Coming at number 10 spot, we have Bikini Bottom is the result of nuclear testing. This one blew my mind. See what I did there? Now the main reasoning behind a nuclear bomb is because some say that Bikini Bottom is located beneath Bikini Atoll, which has been a well-known location for nuclear bomb testing. And we all know how nukes are so evil, right, Mermaid Man? This would explain everyone's ability to communicate in a human fashion, their strange behavior, and a host of other wacky characteristics. The show has many depictions of nuclear mushroom clouds. I know we have all seen it. And apparently in one episode that features a town called Rock Bottom, it supposedly mimics a crater created on the ocean floor due to one of these nuclear bomb tests. That's not all. You remember that island they hopped on when they went above the water? That's supposedly Bikini Atoll. And the reason why it's empty is because the US government relocated the 146 residents of the island to conduct these nuclear tests. SpongeBob creators hid this from the public because why would anyone want their children watching a show about post-nuclear sea animals? Doesn't sound too pleasing. At our number 9 spot, we have SpongeBob bootleg tape. This is one of those cases of watching a video that is cursed, kind of what you see in the movie The Ring, except this one is on the kids show SpongeBob. This image was taken from a split-second frame in a corrupted bootleg of the SpongeBob episode Dump. The story is about a tape that was found by a group of 5 teenagers who were rummaging through trash cans outside an abandoned mental hospital. Other than the image, the rest of the video is composed of incomprehensible jumbles of colors, static, or just black screens. The audio seems to be a heavily distorted version of the audio from the original episode with loud droning buzzes occasionally interrupting it. Of these 5 individuals, 2 have taken their life, 1 has gone missing, and 1 refuses to comment on the tape. At our number 8 spot, we have the main characters represent the 7 deadly sins. The 7 deadly sins of Christianity are said to be represented by each of SpongeBob's main characters. According to some fans, Gary the Snail, a bottom feeder who never stops eating, represents the sin of gluttony. SpongeBob's obsession with acquiring a driver's license or Pearl's obsession with boys could be referred to as lust. Mr. Krabs, who once has sold SpongeBob's souls for 62 cents, is undoubtedly an example of greed. Patrick is the laziest person I know in the show, and he turned the sin sloth into a way of life. Given how much Squidward despises Patrick and SpongeBob, Wrath ought to be his middle name. Plankton shows envy the way he despises the success of Mr. Krabs and is always trying to steal the Krabby Patty formula. And of course, pride plays out in Sandy, who thinks she's hot stuff being from Texas and all. If they truly do represent all 7 deadly sins, I don't think this would be God's favorite TV show. At our number 7 spot, we have Krusty Krab's secret formula is crabs. So this theory suggests that Mr. Krabs is a cannibal. Let's dig into this theory because it's kind of juicy. So if you really think about it, Mr. Krabs is the only crab in Bikini Bottom, but why? In a past episode, Mr. Krabs says this.
So that's what I taste like.
And if you take a good look at the Krusty Krab restaurant, doesn't it kind of look like a lobster trap? You know, crabs, lobsters, same thing kind of. So he makes a ton of money from selling crabs, so he definitely keeps it a secret so no one will truly know about the horrors of what he is doing. At our number 6 spot, we have Chum Bucket's dark secret. Since we just mentioned the Krusty Krab, I thought it was best to mention their not very good rival, the Chum Bucket. We all know that everyone in the Bikini Bottom completely hates the Chum Bucket. This is why every day Plankton gets up to steal the secret formula because it's just not working out for him. A theory proposed by Reddit user SpongeBob Lover 04 states that the chum bucket runs off of cannibalism. First of all, chum is the bait they use to catch sharks, which is usually made up of ground up fish. This would mean that Plankton secretly hunts down fish to ground them up and mix it into his burgers. The fish that would be going to eat at the chum would be literally eating their own kind. So this definitely makes sense why they're feeling extremely sick after eating this. At the hump of our list, we have Plankton is damaging SpongeBob's brain. As the show went on, it seemed that every episode had SpongeBob doing something more absurd than the last. I read a theory proposed by That's a Yikes, stated that Plankton's various incidents with SpongeBob caused him to damage his brain. First things first, Plankton was quite literally inside of SpongeBob's mind in the episode Plankton, allowing him the ability to mentally program SpongeBob, as well as showing a competent ability to manipulate the functions of the brain. In the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, Plankton is shown to have mastered mind control with his chum bucket helmets, most likely due to the success he had on SpongeBob. Time and time again, Plankton has altered SpongeBob's brain, so it's definitely malfunctioning.
Come on, baby, what's the name? We threw out his name!
Kinda dark stuff, Plankton. At our number 4 spot, we have It's a Metaphor for World War II Germany. According to fan theory by Drake Grayson, the show represents pre-World War II Germany. Squidward, a failing artist and a complete jerk, acts like Adolf and wants to evict all of his neighbors. In the case for Adolf, it was the Jews, so SpongeBob kinda represents them in the eyes of Squidward. Patrick is pretty much oblivious the whole show, so it's said that he represents the ignorance and the blindness of the German people when the genocide was happening right in front of their eyes. Sandy represents America, always karate chopping her her way out of conflict, just like how the US came in the war guns blazing. Finally, Mr. Crab represents the rest of Europe, treating Germany, aka the Bikini Bottom, along with Adolf or Squidward, poorly since Germany started the war in the first place. This one is nuts for me because I would have never thought you can put Adolf and SpongeBob in the same sentence ever, but I guess you can. All the way at our number 3 spot, we have SpongeBob represents global warming. One Redditor made the claim that SpongeBob is a metaphor for global warming. He claimed that all characters have their part in explaining the theory of global warming and its detrimental effects in the sea. For example, SpongeBob is quite literally a sponge and represents the waste and pollution that is made in the world. We all know that pollution causes greenhouse gases that warm the earth, eventually melting icebergs, floating earth, you know the vibes. So SpongeBob is the pollution, and he works for Mr. Krabs, who resembles large corporations responsible for the waste in the first place. Mr. Crab loves that SpongeBob works for him because he takes little to no pay with maximum efficiency, showing that these corporations only care about the money and not the environment. Patrick represents Western civilization because he is unhealthy, unintelligent, and quite literally lives underneath a rock, and only instigates SpongeBob, which is the pollution, to wreak more havoc in the Bikini Bottom. At a number 2 spot, we have every character suffers from substance addiction. The show was first pitched as an adult cartoon, so before all the child-friendly goofy scenes, there were a few mature topics that were left out of the show. One writer claimed that every character on the show is addicted to some sort of narcotics. SpongeBob is supposedly on speed or methamphetamine due to intense feelings of happiness, increased energy, and his intermittent paranoia that comes every now and again. This fan claims that Mr. Krabs is the dealer, and that's why SpongeBob is okay with making little to no money. Mr. Krabs is said to be addicted to cocaine because of his love for money, which satisfies his substance cravings. Squidward is said to be on opioids, which explains his relaxed nature and his urge to be left alone. Then we have Patrick, who is supposed to resemble the common marijuana user, but in my opinion, he seems drunk half the time, so maybe he does a bit of both. This theory is kind of dark, so I'm sorry to some of the kids who have to hear this one. Coming in at number 1 spot, we have SpongeBob is a nature documentary for humans. Okay, so a YouTuber by the name of Alex Vale coined this theory in the first place, so credits to him. He explains this in more depth, but here's a little summary. He said that SpongeBob is actually a nature documentary film by humans to investigate abnormally intelligent sea creatures that act like humans. In an old SpongeBob DVD, there's a bonus feature that shows human scientists studying and filming the creatures of Bikini Bottom because the fish were exactly acting like humans. There's even one episode where SpongeBob is taking a driver's test and he even runs over the human camera guy who's narrating as well.
Test for the year, and if SpongeBob does not pass this one, it means another whole year of boarding school! What happened?
We can clearly see his human legs, so this kind of confirms his point. You also remember the human hand that would appear on screen, especially in the opening song when he puts on SpongeBob's pants? Yeah, well, this is because SpongeBob is the main character of the documentary, meaning he has to take care and protect him. Then there's another episode that shows a human family watching SpongeBob and turning it off on the TV, further proving this theory. Starting our list right at number 10, we have It's All in Peter's Head. For more than 2 decades, the characters of Seth MacFarlane's Family Guy has put themselves through increasingly absurd situations. Whether it's epic chicken fights or the Peter Copter, the Griffins have gone through situations that would be completely absurd in real life. However, in the world of the show, they can get away with just everything and be fine in just the next episode. So why is that? A Reddit fan theory suggests the reason why they do this is because the world of Family Guy takes place inside of Peter Griffin's head. Let's begin with his kids. We all know the unattractive daughter Meg. Well, it's said that she's actually a beautiful and popular teenager with a slight drinking problem. Meanwhile, Chris is actually a mentally challenged brother. Well, in the show, it kind of depicts that already. Theory says that one day she got too drunk and decided to pick up Chris, but ended up in a fatal car accident killing them both. This would explain why Peter dislikes Meg so much, especially because her issues caused the death of her brother. His wife Lois was broken down from the death of the children and decided to take her own life while having Stewie in the womb. Yes, this theory is really dark, so I'm sorry kids. With the loss of the entire family, Peter loses his mind and creates this whole fantasy world inside of his own head. As for Stewie, well, Peter never got to meet Stewie, which is why he's portrayed as a smart and cunning baby, because this is a reflection of how Peter expected his son to be. Coming at number 9, we have an allusion to the Twin Towers. First of all, rest in peace to all of those affected. But did you know that Family Guy creator Seth MacFarlane was due to catch a flight that was destined to hit the Twin Towers, and his reason being was that he was hungover and overslept. Because I didn't know this, and I swear a lot of celebrities claim they just missed this tragedy, but this one is a little bit deeper than that. It was such an important event that fans thought it was the direct inspiration for the film's plot of Stewie having a near-death experience. Do you remember the scene where Stewie would get crushed by a falling lifeguard seat? Well, the scene is peppered with snippets of dialogue that may or may not reference the falling towers, such as Stewie saying, quote, "Well then, it seems like there's only one thing to do. I must ensure that I had never gotten a close call with that lifeguard tower in the first place." And he also was saying, quote, "Yes, I did it. I stopped the tower from falling." This line struck out to me a lot because the falling tower was mentioned throughout the entirety of the film. Stewie's main goal was to go back in time to stop this tragedy. This moment could be attributed to the way Seth feels about missing the flight that was due to crash into the Twin Towers. That mixed feeling of guilt and relief is one of those feelings that are very hard to deal with, which could have inspired this traumatic episode in the first place. At our number 8 spot, we have the CIA's responsible for all humanoid animals. Do you remember that large chicken that would almost come out of nowhere and just start a full-on MMA fight with Peter? Well, his name is Ernie the Giant Chicken. Damn, I remember those fights, and I swear they would last just the whole show and be super chaotic and whatever. Well, a theory proposed by Reddit user Dial Taylor states that the CIA and the Family Guy and even the American Dad series has the ability to put human brains into any other animal or human. Klaus from the sister show American Dad and Brian Griffin from Family Guy are both great examples of this because they are both intelligent humanoids that could potentially pose problems for the CIA, such as Klaus potentially beating the USA in the Olympics for skiing and Brian being a hardcore liberal. Humanoids appear all over the universe. It could very well be a brain swapping program used to control the population. We know how sketchy the government is, and even more so in these TV shows. At our number 7 spot, we have the multiverse. Just came back from a Marvel movie, and it seems like I can't escape the multiverse theory, even in my own favorite show. Family Guy is just one of those shows where anything can happen at any time. This theory suggests that when the show first got cancelled in 2002, only 3 years after its debut, the old universe was completely destroyed, which is why the show is much more different after its re-release. This means that everyone in the show before are gone, and the characters we see now are the people in a new universe. At our number 6 spot, we have Stewie manipulates time on a deeper level. We see Stewie zapping in and out of different time periods using his time machine. Casual thing for a baby, I might say. But have you noticed that Stewie always stays around the same age? It doesn't seem like he gets any bigger, nor does he look any different throughout the whole 20 years of the show. The other family members seem to age, but very, very slowly. For example, Meg started at 16 and now she's around 18. Lois turns 43 in that episode where she had a midlife crisis, and Brian started the series as 7 and just celebrated his 10th birthday this season. So back to Stewie. He makes himself young to avoid the responsibilities of being old. Do you remember that episode when Stewie went into the future only to see a depressing, sad version of himself? That's the type of reality Stewie wants to avoid. On another note, he could be doing it for Brian as well. Seeing Brian die for the first time traumatized him, and he openly admits that it's his best friend. So he could very well be doing it to prolong his time with Brian. Right in the hump of our list, we have Brian is the real writer of the show. In season 12, episode 9, named Peter Problems, we hear Brian saying, quote, "I have a job, I'm a writer, I'm working right now. See this, all of this? This is the raw material of a picture of life that I'm going to paint with words." This got fans thinking if Brian could be the writer of the show. We know that Seth MacFarlane writes the show in real life, and he uses his own voice to play Brian Griffin. He doesn't change it or anything. This could explain why Brian is often seen as the voice of reason, or is the one to dispute arguments and feuds between different characters. Most of the exclusive and deeper meaning Family Guy episodes are the ones with Stewie and Brian. And since Brian experienced these firsthand, it makes sense that these episodes are in more detail than any other. Number 4, we have Peter saved Lois's life. Reddit user Lemonade proposed a theory that Peter saved Lois from a life of depression and potentially worse. It's mentioned many times in the past that Lois was a drug addict in her days as a young adult. She has also shown bad tendencies such as being a kleptomaniac who is unable to resist the urge to steal. On top of that, her father is rich, but always seemed to be a little bit busy and would often neglect the young Lois. Being from a rich family meant that it was unlikely she faced the consequences for her actions. So picture this, a young rowdy girl with no discipline and an addiction to drugs. It almost seems like a recipe for disaster, all until Peter came along. Peter was mentally challenged at the time, so this gave a misdirected Lois an opportunity to take care of someone, which also slowed down her life in a good way. All the way at our number 3 spot, we have Family Guy's All a Cover-Up. Originally, everyone's lives in the show were amazing. Cleveland still had a wife, Joel had his son, and a loving marriage where his wife didn't cheat on him. Quagmire did the single life and his family probably wasn't tragic at this point. Peter was dumb, but still managed to care for his family. Well, except for Meg. However, as the show progressed, everyone's lives took a turn for the worse. Peter and Lois will get into more frequent arguments, which led the two to be separated multiple times. Meanwhile, Cleveland lost his wife and his show, so when he came back, he gained a wife that still loves someone else. Quagmire started to hate on Brian aggressively, and he would often confess his love for his best friend's wife, Lois. Bonnie and Joe had a baby, but right after they would begin to hate one another. Even Brian died for a bit. At our number 2 spot, we have Joe Can Actually Walk. Joe is just known on the show as a character glued permanently to his wheelchair due to an accident in the past. Joe is often seen to act over the top emotionally, but is also used to insert awkward yet still funny humor, often regarding his disability. However, many fans believe that all of it is just a cover-up and he is actually able to walk. In many different episodes, Joe explains the origins of his disability, but each story is different from one another. In one backstory, Joe mentions that he got disabled due to fighting with the Grinch on a rooftop. In another backstory, he says that criminal Bobby Briggs is the one who shot him in the legs. Every story is different, and it just seems that he can't even get his story straight, which could potentially mean he's lying. Taking our number 1 spot, we have Stewie, Meg, and Chris are not Peter's kids. A fan theory suggests that Stewie, Meg, and Chris could not be Peter's children at all. Well, first of all, do we really think any one of them looks like Peter or Lois? In season 15, episode 20 named A House Full of Peters, it shows Peter donating his sperm to a sperm bank. The kids that shared the same sperm all pretty much look the same as Peter. So how could Stewie, Meg, and Chris not look like Peter at all? The theory states that back in the day, Lois had many affairs, and we could see that that isn't impossible, especially with her fishy past of adult filming and substance abuse. Starting our list right at number 10, we have the God particle. There was a major breakthrough in 2012 called the Higgs boson, better known as the God particle. This explained how everything in the universe has a mass. However, it seemed that Homer Simpson discovered it well before 2012. Guess you can call him a genius. Because in a 1998 episode in season 10, Homer turns his attention to becoming an inventor, taking inspiration from Thomas Edison's life story. Surprisingly, during his time in the lab, Homer accidentally predicts the mass of the Higgs boson, or the God particle, as seen in the picture with his representation of donuts. So is the God particle a donut? Well, not exactly. According to scientists, if you work out the equation, you get the mass of a Higgs boson that's only slightly larger than the nanomass of the actual Higgs boson. Another scientist named Simon Singh claimed that the equation is a playful combination of various fundamental parameters like the Planck constant, the gravitational constant, and the speed of light. So I'll be the first to say it, Homer is not the scientist we want, for specific reasons, but he's in fact the scientist that we need. Coming at number 9, we have the 2013 horse meat scandal. Season 5, episode 19, in the episode Sweet Seymour Skinner's Song that aired all the way back in 1994. Seymour gets fired due to pranks caused by Bart Simpson, with Flanders of all people replacing the principal. In a quick visual, we see lunch lady Doris rummaging for horse parts in a barrel to add to the school lunch. Attention, horse meat is back on the menu, boys. It's no surprise since we've seen Doris do much worse things like date Hans Molman or getting it on with groundskeeper Willie. Fast forward 19 years and the Safety Authority of Ireland discovered horse DNA in over 1/3 of beef burger samples from many supermarkets and ready meals all around the world. This would be known as a 2013 horse meat scandal. Guess horse racing is slowly changing into horse eating. At our number 8 spot, we have a baby cry translator. Season 3, episode 23. In the episode Brother Can You Spare Me 2 Dimes that aired all the way back in 1992. Homer's long-lost brother, Herb, helps create a device that could translate baby cries into real words. This device would have the ability to translate infants' gibberish into full English sentences. Imagine if this could be done. Oh wait, it did. Fast forward 24 years, in 2016, Taiwanese scientists developed an app that could distinguish different crying sounds of a baby and translate into more common speech. Researchers said that the app can immediately decode a baby's crying sound within 15 seconds. So if you ever want to have a full-blown conversation with a baby, your time is now. Tragically, at our number 7 spot, we have the Seafried and Roy tiger attack. Separate Fishbasher and Roy Hearn, the famous Vegas performers who worked with big game cats, were parodied by the show in 1993. The Simpsons predicted the horned tiger attack 10 years before it actually occurred. In the season 5 episode Springfield, Homer and Ned Flanders travel to Las Vegas where they meet Gunther and Ernst, which is basically a parody of Siegfried and Roy. Near the end of the episode, one of the duo's white tigers is shown attacking one of the performers. Then, 10 whole years later, in 2003, Horn actually suffered a career-ending injury after a tiger attacked him during a show. The prediction from afar seems remarkable, but the Simpsons production crew dismissed it by saying that it was bound to happen. Guess they spoke tragedy right into existence, and they were so right about it. With our number 6 spot, we have the faulty voting machines. Season 20, episode 4, which aired in 2008, Simpsons showed Homer trying to vote for Barack Obama in the US general election, but a faulty machine changed his vote. It showed Homer's vote change from Obama to his political rival John McCain. Now 4 years later, after the episode in 2012, Obama was up against Republican Mitt Romney. There was someone in Pennsylvania who filmed themselves voting, showing that the machine they were using was broken. Just like in the episode, the machine would switch the Obama picks with Mitt Romney picks. Right in the hump of our list, we have autocorrect. The Simpsons supposedly predicted the autocorrect feature in a 1994 episode. This feature wasn't invented until 2007. In this episode, Bully Dolph wrote the memo, "Beat up Martin" on his Apple Newton. Then the text autocorrects to "Eat up Martha." When Apple worked on the iPhone keyboard in 2007, rumors say that the engineers knew what they needed to get right, and that was the autocorrect feature. Could this be influenced from the show, or did The Simpsons predict yet another incredible technological feat? Coming in at number 4, we have a Nobel Prize. In season 22, episode 1, which aired in 2010, it showed Homer, Lisa, Milhouse, Martin, and others putting a pool together to bet on who would win the Nobel Prize for economics, chemistry, and other categories. We got to see the Nobel Prize for economics get announced, and while Jagdish Bhagwati won the fictional award on the animated TV show, Milhouse actually casted his vote on Bengt Holmstrom, previously shown on the paper. The thing is, he actually won the Nobel Prize 6 years later after the episode aired, which makes us rethink what's true at this point. Could Milhouse be the one behind Simpsons' predictive powers? Who knows? All the way at our number 3 spot, we have Canada legalizing weed. In a 2005 episode called Midnight RX, filmed during the show's 16th season, character Mr. Burns starts a chain reaction making prescription drugs affordable in Springfield, Illinois. Because of this, Homer and Grandpa Simpson started smuggling cheaper drugs from Manitoba, Canada, and found out that they were praised as heroes. On one of their future runs, they were joined by Apu and Ned. While in Canada, Ned meets a Canadian version of himself, set with a curly afro, but instantly starts taking a disliking to him after the counterpart tries to sell him a reeferino, which was legal there. Remember, this was back in 2005 where marijuana when marijuana legalization wasn't even thought of. Then, fast forward 13 years later, in 2008, the prediction came true. Canada made cannabis legal in all provinces and territories. Time to add one more correct prediction in our list. All the way at our number 2 spot, we have FaceTime. Season 6, episode 19, which aired all the way back in 1995, Simpsons seem to have predicted commercial video calling. Remember, this is 1995. These were pre-internet days, and in this episode they showed Lisa time travel to a time when she's having a face-to-face online chat with her mom, Marge, which was virtually impossible at the time. Oddly enough, 15 years later, Apple re-announced their new and revolutionary FaceTime. But I don't really know what's so special about lagging out every single 2 minutes. But what about Skype? Well, first of all, Skype is almost dead, but Skype was released in 2003, which was still well before the making of this episode. Even though technology was leading to the discovery eventually, Simpsons always seemed to be ahead of the game. All the way at our number 1 spot, we have Donald Trump. 16 years before Donald Trump's win in the US elections, The Simpsons predicted the billionaire businessman would become the president. In season 11, in an episode called Bart to the Future, the show predicted a Trump presidency back in 2000. In the episode, Lisa is pictured sitting in the Oval Office surrounded by advisors, where Lisa said that, quote, "We're inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump." The show also mocked Trump in an episode last year after he announced he was running for president. The show even featured a scene where Trump was seen waving from an escalator, almost exactly mirroring a video of him taken in 2015. Is The Simpsons a product of predictive programming, or are these too far-fetched to believe?
Starting off this countdown at number 10, The Inconveniencing. This was Gravity Falls' first attempt to become menacing, and still be child-friendly towards its audience. For me, I actually really liked this episode. Dipper and Wendy established a bond, with Dipper creating a really nice character arc, all while him, Mabel, and Wendy's friends accidentally getting some ghosts angry by gate crashing at their convenience store. This leads to really amazing scenes with spooky images and music, stakes to the story, and a surprise twist laugh at the end. The whole build up to when the ghost finally appears is really creepy, but it picks up a lot when you see Mabel being lifted up in the air and her eyes glowing as she talks just like Kevin Michael Richardson. That's when everything got real. This is the first time we actually see anyone get possessed in the show ever. When watching that scene, it creeped me out, but it also really surprised me too, with where the show is going to go and all. Given that part where Mabel turns her head the other way, and much a parody to The Exorcist, it was really creepy yet really cool. Number 9, Northwest Mansion Mystery. Here, Dipper and the gang are invited to Northwest's party at their mansion, filled with a horrifying ghost seeking revenge, creepy wooden lifeless people, and terrifying sights of all kinds. This is a very dark Gravity Falls episode. While Mabel, Candy, and Grenda try to gain the attention of one boy, Dipper and Pacifica investigate the haunted tremors that rock the manor. In diving in, they discover a horrible secret that leads Pacifica to take a drastic turn. The twist here is incredibly profound and socially relevant, and surprisingly, Dipper and Pacifica's tandem pay off the romantic hints. And the best thing about this is it's not even focused on the main character. The real arc is with Pacifica, who turns from being one of the most annoying characters on the show to one of the best. Even with all its scary sights, it's still a really fun episode to watch. Number 8, Scarioki. Despite decking them out in Mystery Shack swag, the arrival of 2 government agents investigating the strange happenings in Gravity Falls does more to establish the season's arc than catalyze the episode's action. And the same can be said of Dipper's belief that, quote, "There's something huge going on right under our noses." By the end of Scarioki though, it's an arguable point, because its second half set at the Mystery Shack's grand reopening party, organized by Mabel, is overstuffed with joys large and small. There's Wendy saying of a black light going on her teeth, "It's like a crime scene in my mouth." There's a very stylish dressed Stan fighting off a zombie horde, yelling, "The only wrinkly monster who harasses my family is me." And last but certainly not least, there's Mabel getting her reluctant brother and uncle to sing the perfect 3-part harmony that is Zombie's sole weakness. The contrast of the tween girl pop hit and a bunch of exploding zombie skulls is just pure bliss. Number 7, Not What He Seems. Is this the part where one of us faints? As Mabel's closing question suggests, Not What He Seems sends Gravity Falls' longest running mystery into overdrive, revealing both who wrote the journals and what Stan's doomsday device is for. Before the episode's big finale though, it's a heartfelt family trust fall wrapped in a prison break adventure sprinkled with pop culture allusions, and series and jokes. Among the highlights are a terrific dunk on Ashton Kutcher and Punked and Zeus's laugh line. It's the final countdown just like they always sung about. But first among equals is Mabel securing her and Dipper's release from government custody after Stan is arrested, by writing several times as overrated in the dirt on a Hummer's window, so enraging a beefy trucker, and several times fan, that he drives him off the road. Number 6, A Tale of Two Stans. By the end of this series' second season, the truly best episode really starts to pile up. Some are better than A Tale of Two Stans, but few are more wrenching. Just the pathos of the episode, seeing the long line of bad choices and worse luck that Stan and Ford both make from high school on that pushes them further and further apart from one another. And deeper into the most self-defeatingly toxic parts of himself, it's just absolutely gutting. That Stan was revealing the secrets of his past and the depth of Ford's paranormal experimentation to the twins while under investigation from the government agency that has been trying to trap Stan in the act of dimensional tampering the whole season gives the Pine brothers' harrowing history both a chance to breathe and some much needed moments of comic relief. But that relief isn't a cure. The brothers do not come out on the other end forgiving each other. Number 5, Society of the Blind Eye. In this season 2 episode, wanting to retrace the author of Journal 3, Dipper and Mabel, along with Wendy and Zeus, track down Old Man McGucket to investigate. However, their search takes a drastic turn when Lazy Susan is kidnapped after a gnome sighting by a group of people in red clothing cloaks. It sets in motion one of the series' most secretly ambitious episodes, first morphing into a study of Old Man McGucket, and then to an unsettling lesson about the uses of memory. The B-plot in which Mabel frets over her failed summer romances. I just don't get it, Wendy. I hug a lot, I can burp the alphabet, I have scratch and sniff clothing, why does everybody leave me? As it turns out, the Society of the Blind Eye has been erasing the townspeople memories of supernatural occurrences, using a machine that McGucket, once a scientist, developed and used on himself. Watching the man's mind and life come undone as his reel of memories unpools on screen is one of the more unsettling sequences in the show, though it speaks to the importance of even our worst memories in creating our sense of self. Now that I've seen what happened, he assures Mabel, I can begin to put myself together again. A stark portrayal of cult Society of the Blind Eye is a leap forward in the series' main arc of Grunkle Stan's hidden plot. Number 4, Headhunters. The reopening of Gravity Falls Wax Museum, followed by the execution of Mabel's glittering sculpture of Stan tees up the raft, of humorous pulp culture references that landed Headhunters on this list. The central mystery is pretty low stakes compared to later installments, but the episode sees Gravity Falls begin to stretch its comic legs. There's a brilliant sight laugh involving Dipper and Mabel's crayon and glitter fake IDs, for which they pose as Sir Dipping Sauce and Lady Mableton, to get into a dive bar. Not to mention, when entering the museum, Stan finds the blinds left open, and whacks Abraham Lincoln in a puddle on the floor. Wax John Wilkes Booth, he says, I'm looking in your direction. Number 3, Into the Bunker. This is the second episode in season 2, and it was excellent. There are 2 scenes with a shapeshifter that really caught my eye as a really creepy moment. This first one was when he revealed himself shaped as a person. At first we think it might be the author of the book, but it is later revealed to be a phony. He turns his head around, the body screams, runs up the wall, and is so disturbing. The second one was after the shapeshifter had been thrown into the freezer machine. As it slowly starts freezing him, he threatens Dipper. He tells him once he meets the author and learns who it is, it'll be too much for him. One thing that really sells this is the performance. The voice actor of this role is Mark Hillman, and he was once the voice of the Joker in the Batman animated series. And when Zeus said good luck sleeping tonight, that really sets it in for you as the watcher, hinting that you probably will have issues sleeping after watching that episode. Number 2, Weirdmageddon Escape from Reality. Weirdmageddon was a great 3-parter, and I definitely liked the first and third the most, but in the second I appreciated how we got to see Dipper and Mabel's friendship come back together. But in between is when Dipper realizes how evil Mabelland really is. When Dipper believes he's having a moment with Wendy, he realizes it's a trick that Mabelland is playing on him. And once he stated out loud that she isn't the real Wendy, it then becomes a bunch of bugs, taking a very creepy and weird turn. As well as the entire atmosphere going dark, Dipper looks at the tree behind him, and it gets so creepy and disturbing, and then everyone's saying, we are watching you, we are watching you. A lot of the imagery from Weirdmageddon episodes are already creepy enough with the atmosphere alone. Part 1 and Part 3 are gruesome as well, with the dreary backgrounds and the really creepy characters, which are Bill's friends. But in that episode, that scene stands out the most as very dark and disturbing when tapping into Bill's true power, and what he wants to do to reshape the world as his playpen, as twisted and sick as he wants it to be. Now coming in at number 1, Summerween. Of course, because Gravity Falls has a spooky vibe, so they have to have a Halloween episode, leading to an awesome story about Dipper, Mabel, and their friends trying to collect enough candy. The story focuses mainly on Dipper building an ark, but we also see Mabel's insecurities about growing up and understanding between them as the episode progresses. The scariest moment of the entire episode is when the Summerween trickster is on screen. He may not have powers, but his physicality makes him resemble a creature from Spirited Away named No Face. He is obsessed with getting the children to get him candy, and if they don't, he will eat them like no one ate him, which is weird, but despite this odd motivation, though his backstory does come up very frightening into how he was designed and everything.